Well, hello there, and welcome to the Weekend Update. I'm Jim Harrington.
And I am Bill Knight. Boy, it is the weekend. You know, the weekend, we've always said it, I'll say it again. It is like they've got a scatter gun, and they load it up with all the crap they can, and they fire it every direction that they can. And I did say yesterday, Janine Pirro, with her new appointment and up for everything, I said they're going to dig up her past. And boy, did they do it henceforth yesterday. Going back to when she was getting into a divorce.
Apparently, for those who don't know, when she was a DA, she, I guess, didn't have the right to do it, but she recorded her husband either discussing an affair or having an affair, and I guess it was ridiculous. She's been, by the way, at Fox for over 10 years. So
it's old news.
Yes, exactly.
But here's the question. Now, I don't know if he owned the boat, she owned the boat, they were married, and he was out having an affair. Now, if that were me, I don't care what my position is, and my spouse is having an affair, and it's on property that I either have legitimate access to, just like they do, and if he does, you do too. You're married.
Right.
Or if it's mine, let me ask you something. How many people in their home have video surveillance, which also records?
Sure. Absolutely.
All right. Is there a sign that says, you are being recorded and, anything you do or say can be held against you? No, it doesn't. So, that was a aha thing that, the left used against her then, and they're trying to go aha again. All right, lefties, you only get to do that once.
They don't know that, Bill. They don't know that. They do it all the time.
You only get to do that once. And you know what? If that is how you're going to treat her because she had a husband that was out dallying his dalliance, the simple fact is, I hope it happens to you. Because I'm sorry. Pope says, God's not Superman, so, and we just got to be the dignity of humanity. You have no dignity, so I hope, classless things knock on your door.
So she ended up, it ruined her political career.
Mm-hmm.
But
she recovered.
Some would say that her career in general took off after that happened. She never would have been known as, Judge Janine. She never would have been on Fox. She would have been a local politician who maybe her career would be over by now. So they're trying to make something out of nothing here. I think, by the way, at this point in her life, it's water off a duck's back, and she will probably be nominated for the position. I guess she's interim now, Bill? She's
interim, but that's what they are going to do and use that. And I would like to know, just for the record, I think the public needs to know, that each person that does an interview there, Republican, Democrat, doesn't matter, I want you to sign a statement that you have not had a dalliance, an affair, or anything. I want to know, how clean of a background you got.
Well, you know what Trump said yesterday?
She was the victim in this.
He said, okay, if you're going to play this game, two can play this game too, meaning the Democrats. Mm-hmm. He said, we'll have Janine for 120 days, and then I'll get Sidney Powell and make her the interim for another 120 days. What he was saying was he'll keep filling the gap with his people, people who he likes, and until his term is over. He'll just keep, if you're going to keep blocking his nominations, he's starting to play hardball, Bill. I pointed this out to you before the show started. The only place that I heard discuss the possibility, believe it or not, was right here on our show. You're going to say, what are you talking about? We talked about over the past week, maybe longer
than that.
Yeah, the possibility of President Trump suspending habeas corpus, which means that he could circumvent the judges and their ridiculous partisan decisions, and he could just rule on what's going to happen to these illegals and then ship them off and ignore these ridiculous blockages that are being thrown in the way. I say that because yesterday in the driveway of the White House, Stephen Miller was walking out, and he walked into a group of reporters, and one of them asked the question.
Hold on, there's a question back there first.
I have two quick questions. First, President Trump has talked about potentially suspending habeas corpus to take care of the illegal immigration problem. When could we see that happen, do you think?
Well, the Constitution is clear, and that, of course, is the supreme law of the land, that the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus can be suspended in a time of invasion. So I would say that's an option we're actively looking at. Look, a lot of it depends on whether the courts do the right thing or not. At the end of the day, Congress passed a body of law known as the Immigration and Nationality Act, which stripped Article 3 courts, that's the judicial branch, of a jurisdiction over immigration cases. So Congress actually passed, it's called jurisdiction stripping legislation. It passed a number of laws that say that the Article 3 courts aren't even allowed to be involved in immigration cases. Many of you probably don't know this. I'll give you a good example. Are you familiar with the term temporary protected status, or TPS, right? So by statute, the courts are stripped of jurisdiction from overruling a presidential determination or a secretarial determination on TPS when the Secretary of Homeland Security makes that determination. So when Secretary Noem terminated TPS for the illegals that Biden flew into the country, when courts stepped in, they were violating explicit language that Congress had enacted, saying they have no jurisdiction. So it's not just the courts aren't just at war with the executive branch. The courts are at war, these radical rogue judges, with the legislative branch as well, too. So all of that will inform the choices the president ultimately makes.
Okay, I think that that's where they're going to go, because I see no let-up on the part of the leftist judges. And by the way, they are leftist judges. I don't know whether you saw it. A federal judge on Friday issued a temporary restraining order blocking the Trump administration's effort to overhaul and reorganize 20 agencies in the executive branch. Now, last I heard, there's only one person in charge of the executive branch, and that's the president. But this judge is sticking his nose in between the president and his own division. He's stopping the president from performing his presidential duties. And, this goes back to what we talked about before, Bill. It's not the outcome. It's the process that they're doing this for. It's the interruption of the flow of activity. It's the sticking the wrench into the spokes of a moving tire, bicycle tire. It's just trying to cause a problem. And they're being successful. And they're not going to stop, Bill, because I think this is a judicial revolution.
Oh, I think it's gone farther than that. I think they've crossed over a line. I mean, what's his name? Shri, was it the Nader or something like that? Either way, he's the guy from Michigan that filed the articles of impeachment. They're official now, and
the 70-year-old guy from India, immigrant, who is a representative. I know Thanador or Shranador or something like that. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. THENAD. I don't know. Forget about his name. He's from India, but he goes, I don't like him, so here's 7 articles of impeachment. And I'm sitting there going, but it gets worse for the Democrats, because you got down in Newark where ICE has their new detention center, and you had a representative down there that physically got into an altercation with an ICE agent. You got the mayor there of Newark that was arrested for his actions there.
You're jumping ahead. I got some audio from that mayor, because as soon as he was released, as soon as he got out, they took the cuffs off. He got the circulation going on his wrist. He turned around and said, where's the CNN camera? Because I got to talk to CNN. So we're going to play that in a second. But first, I think, Bill, now would be a good time to remind our audience about what? You know what I'm talking about.
Well, you know what? The simple fact that we know you're listening right now. We know there are a lot of you. But there are people that haven't discovered the show yet, and we want everyone to get a taste of what we got to say. So if you would like and share our program, it would be greatly appreciated.
Okay, so we were talking about the mayor of Newark, New Jersey, and all I heard yesterday afternoon on the air was, He's the mayor of New York. He's the mayor of Newark, the biggest city in New Jersey. And they made it sound like it was almost godlike. These are the same people who, when the mayor of New York, the former mayor of New York, Rudy Giuliani, was in all sorts of problems, they stepped on him, trampled on him like he was dirt. Okay, the same people, the same reporters were out there just couldn't do enough to sully his reputation. But when they talk about some clown in New Jersey who, and by the way, when you listen to this audio, I want you to know something that very few of you will hear on the mainstream media reports. Yes, he was out yesterday with 3 representatives demonstrating, trying to get the cameras to take their pictures and essentially cause a problem. But he was out several days this week. One day, apparently, he was there with a bulldozer, as if he was going to break through the fencing to go inside. Now, understand something, folks. That's a federal facility. They say, well, they have a private contractor who operates it. If that private contractor has signed a contract with the federal government, that becomes a federal facility. That's how it works. It's not like it's the private contractor's facility and they're holding him for the federal government. It becomes a federal facility. If I wanted to go into, let's say, Leavenworth, all right, and I went up to the front gate at Leavenworth and I said, I'm coming through because I want to see somebody inside, they would have me in cuffs faster than you can blink an eye. So what they did to this mayor yesterday, they actually gave him more leverage that he deserved. But I want you to hear a few minutes. I'm not going to play the whole cut. It's Caitlin Collins. She's despicable. She just hates Trump. One of the first things they do, Trump was nowhere near this facility, right? But because Elena Haba is the interim U.S. attorney in New Jersey,
they got to tie him in.
They tied Trump in. Yeah, absolutely. Here's the report from CNN with this clown. By the way, this mayor, he's running for governor in New Jersey. New Jersey, I sure hope you have your heads out of your deep and dark places because you don't need this guy to be anywhere near the governor's office.
Alina Habba, who, just for people who may not be familiar, she's President Trump's former attorney. She is now the interim U.S. attorney in New Jersey, in your state. The way she puts what happened today is she is accusing you of ignoring multiple warnings from Homeland Security investigations to remove yourself and says that you chose to, quote, disregard the law. Is that true? Had there been warnings? What had happened?
Well, absolutely not. I mean, we could. The reality is, Alina Habba wasn't there. The U.S. attorney wasn't there. She doesn't know what happened. Clearly, that is not the context of what happened. I was there for over an hour in that space, and nobody ever told me to move. I was in there for over an hour. Not a single person, not an officer from ICE, not any of the security guards. Nobody told me to leave that place. Somebody from Homeland Security came in the end and began to escalate the situation, and we wound up being where we are today. And that's, frankly, the extent of it. I didn't go there to break any laws. I didn't break any laws. I was there as the mayor of the city, exercising my right and duty as an elected official, supporting our Congress people, preparing for a press conference that was supposed to happen there. I did not enter that place unlawfully. I did not break any laws. And so all of that is incorrect.
With all due respect, sir, you're lying because it's on video. They opened the gates to let a car in. This guy ran inside. Once they let the gates open to let a car in that had permission.
He took that as an opportunity to go. Well, they opened the gates for me, not the car. Yeah, that's what he'd say.
Yeah. Well, they didn't work because they put him in cuffs.
You know what? He's an insult to. Never mind. I'm not going to say that.
Well, he's an insult to the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party, by the way, has it's floundering. It's like a dead fish right now. It doesn't have any direction. All it wants, it's lashing out, and it doesn't know what it's lashing out at. You have to understand, Bill, what was inside that facility. the worst of the worst. You have killers, rapists. You have all the vile drug dealers. That's what they have inside that facility that these people are trying to see if they're okay. You know.
Let me ask you a question.
Go ahead.
Kind of a segue here, but, he's sitting there going, I didn't do anything wrong. Another person like that is Letitia James. When she went after Trump time and time again, mortgage fraud, this, although there were many people that came forward on his defense saying what he did was normal business practice. There was no fraud here. This is a bogus case. And here she is, politically attacking him, and she's tied to the Biden administration for doing it. And all of a sudden, turns out that she was casting on him what she was doing herself, and now she's gone, this is all just politically motivated.
Reports say New York State Attorney General Letitia James, she's under investigation by the FBI, but her lawyers are calling it politically motivated. James is said to be the subject of a wire, mail, and bank fraud criminal referral to the Justice Department, all over allegations she has committed mortgage fraud. She's accused of listing a house in Virginia as her primary residence, even though, she serves as the Attorney General of New York State. That's in Albany, 500 miles away. James is also accused of falsifying the number of units in this brownstone building in Brooklyn that she owns. You have a lower number of units, you can qualify for a lower mortgage rate for that property. The Attorney General has called the accusations baseless and says President Trump is targeting her for winning that massive civil fraud case against him last year.
This is nothing more than a revenge tour. This is nothing more than vindictiveness. This is nothing more than an individual who's upset at me because we secured a $454 million judgment against him and his family and his company.
Well, the lawyer Abby Lowell is echoing that writing, quote, this appears to be the political retribution President Trump threatened to exact, that AG Bondi assured the Senate would not occur on her watch. But sources say the brownstone occupancy filing was done by the previous owner and that Virginia home, while it apparently is owned by James's niece. The FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office, though, would not confirm this investigation, but we may hear more about it later tonight. Attorney General James is set to appear at a public event. Certainly, we will try to ask her about this investigation.
It's Eric Shawn on Fox News. Bill, she apparently had her father as a cosign on the property and said that her father was her husband.
Yeah.
And, she broke laws, folks. She is the Attorney General of New York, and in being so, you have to be a resident of New York State.
She's absolutely right. There was political motivation on her side. Trump did absolutely nothing wrong, but he was politically attacked by her. Now, she's done everything absolutely wrong in her real estate dealings, and is she being attacked? No, she's being prosecuted. You can call that a political attack, but it was brought on by yourself, Miss James. You're the guilty one here, and go ahead and take your medicine because you're the one that cooked this whole thing up.
Well, she also, and I find it annoying, and I think it's disrespectful, the way she delivers her message. She does it almost like it's an old-time revival. The way she tries, she tries to get the audience rallied on her side. It's a political this. Yeah, it's a political that. It's baseless. She keeps it.
She's race baiting with it.
Yeah, and I'm thinking this is not this is wrong. She has nothing to say. When she's asked on television news programs, can you tell us about this? She says, I'm not going to litigate my case on television. She avoids answering any part of any question that deals with this case. But yet she goes out immediately and attacks Trump. She's being attacked by Trump. Trump could care less, to be honest with you. This has everything to do with her. You know, she makes it sound like she wouldn't have had this problem if it wasn't for Trump. No, you wouldn't have had this problem if you didn't break the law as the Attorney General of New York. I mean, you're so quick to go after Trump for nothing, and now there's something on you, and it's really something. You may say, well, she only said that the house in Virginia was her prime residence so she could get it. No, it's mortgage fraud. If I go in and I fill out an application for a mortgage for a house, and I say I'm making $100,000 a year, and I'm making 20, that's fraud. If I go in and say that my wife and I are married and we're both responsible, and when in reality we're not, if that were the case, that's fraud. She went and said she was married and her father was her husband. That's fraud. I don't know how she's going to get around it, Bill. I mean, it's like cut and dry. You either are or you aren't lying about who your husband is. Are you married? No, I'm not married. Well, why'd you say your father was your husband? Well,
honestly, I think what they're going to do is they're going to find a big distraction out there to help her out because she is a Democratic child here, so to speak. And while during that distraction, some judge will come along and hammer that gavel and say, yeah, nothing here, case closed, and that's it.
Well, that's interesting you should say that. I think that's a very good possibility because there's so much corruption in our judicial system now. It's mind-boggling. To see all of these district judges come out with all of these ridiculous, nonsensical, unjustified rulings against the administration. And, Trump is trying to be lawful. He's trying to be above board on anything and everything. And yet they don't care. And again, look at these judges. 99% of them, they're Democrats, appointed by
the
Clinton.
Democrats. They love to give out badges of honor and dishonor. The honorable badges go out to only party members. They're highly most touted people. The dishonor, well, those are the people they want to sling mud at. Or, if you decided that you were going to run for political office, in wherever you live, they would all automatically, Harrington's going to be a problem here. Let's go ahead, and if we don't have some dirt on him, we'll make up some dirt.
Let's go back to 1980 and find out what he did. Let's go back to 1975. Is there something he did when he was a young man? And by the way,
did he throw a rock at a kid when he was 12 years old?
Well, by the way, with all due respect, in the course of a lifetime, everybody has done something at some point.
Oh, absolutely. Or they'll have something on everybody, and they'll hang that badge of dishonor on you and look at, like we said, Judge Janine, she had a husband that was screwing around. No better way to put it than that. She goes, I got to catch him red-handed. He's out on the boat, either they have fair access to it, which gives them privilege to, I would say, to record. I wouldn't find anything wrong with it, especially if you catch the person. Or they own it, which, again, gives you privilege to do that because it's there as a safety precaution. But it also caught somebody doing something they weren't supposed to.
Yeah.
So, but they
you know what I would say to Letitia? I would say, Letitia, how's the saying go? People who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. This is coming back at you because you set this up. You caused this action to go into motion. Now it's coming back at you. Don't blame Trump. Don't blame MAGA. It's you that broke the law.
Yeah.
Anyway.
You cast stones. You better make sure that you've got your affairs in order. But see, everybody's got some kind of past. And even if you don't have a past, there's somebody that doesn't like you enough to where, or they really hate you, that they'll make something up because they can say, well, I know somebody that said that they did this because they know somebody. That's good enough for us. Let's take them to the cleaners for it.
For her entire career, her entire public career, she promised to get Trump. That was it. They didn't talk about making it a more legal state. They didn't talk about it being a more just state. They didn't talk about it making a safer state. I'm talking about New York. She talked about getting Trump. That was her whole platform. That was it.
Yeah.
She still thinks now, Bill, that that's going to save her even now. And, based upon what you just said, it being New York, it being corrupt, it being Democratic, they might just cut her slack. They may just say, hey, there's nothing to see here. It was an accidental mistake on her part, and the charges are dismissed.
Now, who was that other gentleman, the attorney that you don't hear from him anymore? In his case, kind of went away, but he threw a lot
Alvin
of
Bragg.
stuff. Alvin Bragg, that's it. Where is he and what's happening with him? Or
he's probably keeping a very low profile. He probably maybe just get behind this rock here, and I'll just keep really low
right here. Yeah, but it just seems like they have players that all right, it's your time up at bat. Here's what you're gonna do. It just seems that they go around the wheel of doom.
Yeah,
and your turn to go out and throw some mud.
Bill, getting back to what we were talking about earlier about the suspension of habeas corpus, I think we really are in a revolutionary time. We're in a soft civil war right now with the judiciary. Don't you think so?
Yeah, and you know what? I'm going to actually write that down. I like that, the soft civil war, because I was, thinking that it started. Whether we like it or not, we are not headed into the fighting's begun. And I say that because you've got elected officials attacking government agents. All right?
Yeah.
And then you've got a guy that's breaking into a security complex that's a mayor. These are all Democrats.
You got the governor of Illinois last weekend getting up in front of a crowd of people and saying, I've never called for a revolutionary situation in my life. I've never called for violence before in my life. I've never called for going out in the streets, but I'm doing so now. That's what the governor of Illinois said. He was out there at the podium encouraging rioting in the streets. And so it truly, is this what the Democrats have right now, Bill? Is they haven't got a platform. They haven't got anything positive to propose. Everything they've done over the last 4.5, 5 years has been mush. The people have turned their backs on what Biden did at the border. People aren't blind. They knew, even when it was happening, they knew it was wrong. But the Democrats flipped us the fickle finger and just kept doing it. They didn't give a rat's you-know-what for what you thought or what I thought. They just kept that darn door open and waved them in. Screw what the people think. It's your country? Yeah, this land is your land. This land is my land. No, this land is our land. You sit down. That's what they were saying to us. This is our land. You sit down. We're not listening to you. We don't care what you think, what you want. We don't care about your family being protected. We're doing this because we want to build up our voter rolls so that we can stay in office forever.
Well, I think their answer to the voter rolls that they lost the election is kind of like a sanctuary city. We're not adhering to the federal law, even though it supersedes anything they got. We've got a sanctuary populace out there, voting populace, that being the Democrat Party. They're not going to acknowledge the election and the results of the majority of the Americans. They're just saying, it's not what we want. We're not going to adhere to it.
Well, Bill, look at 2020. To this day, even now that Trump's in office, and Trump, by the way, hasn't backed down. He says that there were shenanigans in 2020, that it was a fixed election. He won't back down. I happen to believe he's right. But yet, even now, on certain social media platforms, you can't talk like that. You can't say that. You can't have an opinion like that. And I hear Democrats right now to this day saying, we had to live through that civil unrest in January of 2021 in Washington, and all of those poor police officers. Hey, listen, the only person
what poor police officers?
Well, they say 5 police officers died. No police officer died that day. It was Ashley Babbitt.
Yeah, go ahead and for the Democrats out there that they go, oh, that's I got the story. Give me the hard proof.
Absolutely.
Hard proof. I want to see it right now. All right?
They can't show it to you, Bill.
Well, why?
Because it doesn't exist. They'll say,
sure, in their head it does.
Well, the 5 police officers who died, a couple of them died of natural causes. I think one may have died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound, suicide. I mean, it didn't happen as a result of them being stomped on or shot at that revolution, as they would call it, the insurrection. But they're so quick to use that nonsense. You know, I keep saying to people, if 2 million people are on your front lawn and they don't like what you've done, and it's a real revolution, you're not going to stop them. 2 million people, if that was a real insurrection, they would have been in that building. They'd still be in that building. I mean,
they'd be in the building, or it would have been burned down to the ground and not rebuilt.
It happened in Sri Lanka. We talked about it. They had a similar situation where the government failed them, and the people, far less than were on the front lawn of the Capitol, the people said, the heck with this. They stormed that building, chased all the politicians out of the place, and then burned it.
See, Jim, you're missing the point. In Sri Lanka, were those Democrats or Republicans that burned?
Well, I don't know what they were. I think they were.
Well, see, because the narrative is here, Proud Boys, Republicans, conservatives, you're stupid. You're beneath them. So we didn't know how to do it. They're going to show us how to do it. We didn't do an insurrection. But what's going on today is an insurrection. And speaking of which, one thing that we do want to ask you to do, it's very important to us, is if you like the program, like it and share it with your friends. That would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, we're in the middle of a revolution of sorts. I think that they're going to have to suspend habeas corpus. If President Trump is going to have any kind of a effective presidency, he's got to say what they're thinking about saying, that it was an invasion. And by the way, I hear them saying, well, the invasion of narco gangsters and drug dealers and murderers. I also think, by the way, that the mere fact that 20 million illegal people stormed our border was an invasion, and we're now suffering from that problem. The enemy is within. They may say, well, the border's solid now. Why do you have to worry about an invasion? It's over. No, it's not over. You have the illegals in our country now. You have to deal every day with the problem you allowed to take place, to happen. So it isn't over. So President Trump should be able to suspend habeas corpus and go after those 20 million people. I'm not saying you treat everyone like they're a mobster from Chicago, because a lot of the people are just people who want something better. If those people want something better, my advice to them would be take the president's offer of paying for a plane ticket and giving you $1,000 and the opportunity to come back legally. Because when that opportunity runs out, all bets are off. I think it's a limited time offer, isn't it, Bill? I think they have until like July or something like that to.
Yeah, the clock is ticking, and the Democrats are burning the clock. And it's funny, kind of related, because you're talking about the illegals here, and Trump, he's got his he wants to crush anti-gun laws. Now that sparked a Second Amendment boom with gun sales soaring faster than SpaceX rocket can shoot up into the atmosphere, the stratosphere. But either way, you got that boom going on, and that's got to really just sour the left. And a lot of it is women being armed. So, we're not taking it lightly that we've got these open borders and we've closed them. But the number of people here, way more than what you ever dreamed of.
Yeah.
So people are going,
they're saying 20 million. It's more like 30. It's amazing.
It's higher than that,
Yeah, it's amazing, folks. The Roosevelt Hotel in New York, which we talked about a year and a half ago, about it being, we were surprised that they were going to use the old Roosevelt Hotel as a landing site for illegals. The city was going to pay for them to stay rent-free, and we thought, well, that was only going to last for a short period of time. No. They're still living rent-free right now in that beautiful old hotel. That place that hotel should have been bought by a major corporation. It should have been renovated, and it should still be a hotel because it was right at the gates of Grand Central. I used to walk by it, right at the gates to Grand Central Terminal. You walk out of the 43rd Street side of Grand Central, Vanderbilt Avenue exit. You walk right outside going toward Fifth Avenue, and there was the Roosevelt Hotel in all of its splendor. It had beautiful brass doors, and it was really a sight. When I was there, it was still a hotel, and it was still very, very classy. But I guess they closed it, and it was kind of run down. But still, it's a valuable piece of property. Well, it isn't going to be valuable anymore because I'm sure that when they go in there, when they finally get that place back, it's going to probably be trashed. Because people who, I hate to say this, but people who get something for nothing, many times they treat it as if there's no value.
What happens to a house when somebody's there and all of a sudden they lose their job, they can't pay the mortgage, and they're going to have to give it up? If I can't have it, nobody can.
Well, look at squatters.
They trash the place.
Yeah, squatters.
They don't care.
They go into a house that somebody's, it's vacant. Somebody still owns it usually. They go into it, a squatter, and all of a sudden there are holes in walls. And,
they have an attitude. Not my house. What do I care?
Exactly. They don't treat it with any respect at all. And that's probably happening right now at the Roosevelt. I can't even say it.
Yeah, I have that problem too.
Roosevelt Hotel.
Get your tongue wrapped around your eye too.
I couldn't see what I was saying.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's amazing. Bill, I think that the only solution for the president is to suspend habeas corpus. I think he's going to have to do it to have any kind of success in this final term, because they're going to keep doing what they're doing until he's out of office. And you know when it's going to stop? When a Democrat president gets in, all of a sudden, suddenly, these district justices will stop doing the interfering. But if like J.D. Vance or Marco get in, they'll keep doing it because they can. Because they don't have any respect for the law they're supposed to be, supervising. These justices are amazing. They wear the robe. They get the mandatory picture of them in front of a flag. They look like they're, oh my God, they look like they're Oliver Wendell Holmes, every one of them. They look so amazingly respectful and dignified. And yet, these people who are doing this are the worst of the worst. They're revolutionaries. It's like SDS back in the 60s, Students for a Democratic Society. Let's go out and throw stuff in the street. It's like the people at Columbia. To me, there's not much difference between what's happening at Columbia with the demonstrations and these justices. They're doing the same thing. That both of them are trashing the Constitution. Both are trashing the Constitution. They're doing the same thing. They're just wearing different clothes. And I hear these idiots, some of them just amazing, talking about how, well, this judge said this, and his reasoning was, no. His reasoning was he wanted to be an interference. He wanted to be a friggin' roadblock. And it's, and I get a little ticked off. I'm sorry. I really do. I get ticked off at what they're doing to our country. This is where my grandkids are going to have to live, and my great-grandkids. This place is going to be, it's supposed to be we're supposed to hand something nice down to them. But if these guys get their way, it's going to be worthless.
Well, I think that's why a lot of the youth anymore, they're becoming Republicans and going to the right, or at least conservative, because they see what the Democrats are doing and what they're trying to hand off to them. And they're getting the big bowl of squat, nothing. If anything, we're going to leave them a garbage scow, a dump. And thank you, Democrats, for doing that.
Yeah. It's funny. Bill, there was a time when I was a kid. Maybe you remember them. You're a little younger than I am. Everybody is. But there was a guy named Everett Dirksen. He was a senator, and he was dignified, and he disagreed many times with his cohorts across the aisle, but he always treated them with respect. They always talked well, and they weren't vile. Then nowadays, I look at someone like Maxine Waters.
Oh, geez.
Maxine Waters was. She shouldn't be given a microphone anytime soon. She is incoherent. She's vile, and all she does is hate Trump, and she hates him like nobody hates him more. Okay, Maxine Waters. This is some 85 or 86-year-old representative who has a hard time understanding what the hell she's talking about.
She can't read the script. Everything on the left is scripted.
But all she knows is she hates Trump.
Yeah.
She doesn't know what the hell she's talking about, but she hates Trump. She's interviewing Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary. And God bless him. He did his best to be dignified and give her respect. But she's a babbling idiot. I'm sorry. Listen.
Do you know the level, type, or nature of the clearances and security training required for individuals to access the information held in the computers of Treasury, IRS, or CFPB?
Yes, I do, and I think we would have a disagreement over the definition of the word unfettered.
Mr. Secretary, did all the individuals working with DOGE who were given access to Treasury and CFPB's computer databases receive all of the required clearances and security training before they were granted access?
Again, they were granted read-only access at Treasury. There were two.
So let me just say,
DOGE employees.
Please, you can't filibuster here. This is not the filibuster playground. And so what you did was you let these strangers into our Treasury with access to all of the data, all of the personnel information, and you just opened the door. Why'd you do that?
No, ma'am. They were Treasury employees.
Oh, are you saying today in front of this committee that all of them were Treasury employees, that the 25-year-old who's being identified, who worked for Elon Musk, was allowed into the Treasury? Was that person there?
He was a Treasury employee, as was Tom Kraus, the senior person on the DOGE team. There were only two people.
There were DOGE employees also.
Sorry?
Do you know? Were you aware that there were DOGE employees coming into our Treasury getting all of our personal information?
Well, ma'am, there is no such thing as a DOGE employee. There were Treasury employees.
I tend to disagree with you based on the information I had.
Oh, she's like the person who found out there was an exam and she didn't study for it.
Yeah,
but she's trying to
disagree with you.
She's trying to BS her way through it. Like, they were employees of the Treasury. And she's going into the impression that DOGE is a secret organization. It's the Department of Government Efficiency.
Yeah.
Department of Government Efficiency. It is technically part of the government, Maxine. It's not an outside organization run by that secretive guy, that Dr. No of the business world.
The guy they want to lock up?
Say again?
The guy they want to lock up?
Oh, they want to lock him up for no reason. Just because,
forever.
Yeah, because he's a friend of Trump, and he's going against their corruption.
You know, they kind of want to cancel the party out, anybody that's conservative. And, I look at Maxine Waters. She can't even read the statement anymore. She can't see it because she's got prepared text. But one thing that happened to the Democrats is that the party was taken over by lefties and loons and goons. And they're running.
Wait a second. Did you say loons and goons?
Loons and goons, yeah. Well, they're the ones running the party, and they're giving them the script, but it's not a real Democratic script as the Democratic Party that we once knew, and they have been entirely 100% corrupted.
Wouldn't you like to sit down with some of these people like Maxine Waters and Jasmine Crockett and AOC and I want to see their grades. I want to see what courses they took. I actually would love to challenge them educationally about history, for example. Let's talk history. I mean, real facts. I would be willing to. These people are dumb, Bill. They're dumb.
They're going to tell you the history that we learned was wrong, and they're here to correct it. But, when you do something like that, you sit there and correct it with what you want history to read, not what really happened. Now, if you've got positive proof that something is not exactly right, okay, let's have it. But I don't want your word, well, we're getting a lot of that now. I mean, I even saw it with the Pope. Democrats don't like him because he's got some conservative values. But I'm hearing some theological values that just all of a sudden, I mean, he attacked evangelicals, saying they're stupid. And I'm going, you just subscribe to the Democratic narrative, or you're a subscriber of it because you're saying, well, obviously, you don't know what you're talking about. You're an idiot. Well, that just probably took a lot of people that's ever even looked at the Catholic faith, and they're going, wait a minute. You just called me an idiot.
They talk about a guy, Bill, who's from Chicago, born in Chicago, but he becomes a priest, and then he goes up the ranks, bishop, and he goes to, I guess it's Peru, and he gets dual citizenship. He gets Peruvian citizenship, which I think is kind of strange. I mean,
so he's really not an American in my mind.
Well, if you are born and love this country, America. You don't get dual citizenship. I mean, I could easily get Irish citizenship because my ancestry goes right back to Ireland, and that's all it is technically. I wouldn't do it. I said to my grandmother once, Bill, when she was alive, and she came across in 1900 as a 22-year-old single woman. She had $2 in her purse, but in 1900 that was not bad. Believe it or not, $2 could get you somewhere. Not anymore. But I said to her, it was 1965, and I said, Nana, wouldn't you like to go back to Ireland? Wouldn't you like to see Ireland? And she said, not on your life. And I said, what do you mean? Because, the second generation and third generation American Irish here, they're always talking about, I have to see Ireland, I have to see the old country. But when you talk to somebody like my grandmother who lived there, and she suffered there, she lived, with houses that were heated by dry peat. You know what peat is? Peat is, it's just like dried grass from swamps. That they would cut peat cubes, bring it into their house and burn it. And that's how they heated the house. Everybody died young. She had aunts and uncles who died back in the 1840s from the potato famine. I mean, it was all she remembered about Ireland was not. She was proud of being an American. She became an American citizen and loved it. She didn't want to become anything else. And that's why when I hear about this guy being, born in Chicago, he used to go and watch the Cubs play. But then he went to Peru and became a Peruvian citizen. I think, well, wait a second, what are you? Where's your loyalty? Is it to Peru or is it to the United States?
Well, there's one way to find out. Is he a Sox fan?
Good point. Hey, we should take a moment to remind people, if you like what you hear on our program, we're here Monday through Saturday. It's called It's Another Day with Jim and Bill, or Jim and Bill, It's Another Day. We're not really fussy. You can call it just Jim and Bill if you want to. If you did a search online, Jim and Bill would probably pop up. There would be right at the very top. But please,
amazing how that works.
It's amazing. That internet machine is really something else. What you got to do is tell your friends, really like and share our program. The president is about to head off to the Middle East. I always get nervous. I get nervous when he's traveling to hot spots, and he's traveling to hot spots this time.
Yeah, well, the bombs are flying between Pakistan and India. Pakistan fired back, and they bombed India. At some point in time, somebody's going to go, what else do we have in the closet? Well, we got these nukes over here, a couple of hundred. Well, let's try one out.
Yeah.
And it's scary times, and you go, I've heard this before. I've heard it before. This is probably, and we're kind of willy-nilly about it, but this is probably the closest that we have actually come to, could there be a war? And Russia and the Ukraine is not over yet either, because, Putin is probably getting to the point to where, he doesn't give a flying flip anymore. Zelensky is going, every time there's a deal, he backs away from it.
I have mixed feelings about the Ukraine and Russian situation, because I think there have been a few times where if Putin said, okay, let's do this, it might have gotten done. But then again, I could be wrong. It could be that it's almost like they're playing some kind of a dance routine where when Zelensky says, okay, I'm ready to make a deal, and Putin says, well, we're not. And then when Putin says, I'm ready to make a deal, Zelensky says, I'm not. Maybe they just figure that then they don't want this thing to end. I heard them
strutting around like a couple of dodo birds doing the
I heard
dance.
One of the requirements from Russia was that they got Zelensky would have to go. And Zelensky saying, I'm not going anywhere. Now, he should go because he's not a duly elected president.
Hey, he can run for election again.
Sure.
And then that would be fair, him to sit there and say, well, you know what? We'll let the people decide if I go or not.
The other thing Russia
Chances
is saying,
are he's going somewhere.
The other thing Russia is saying is that if they're partially in charge of, let's say that they have an area like a county or a state or something in Ukraine, and they have half of it right now. What they're saying is that they'll make the agreement if they're given the whole state, meaning the Ukraine will have to surrender back to a neighboring state, and they will have to relinquish the state where they have partial control. Do you know what I'm saying?
Let me ask you a question. Maybe I'm not educated here on this, but, when the Soviet Union broke up, there were a lot of things that were left behind, lost, and whatnot. And we know there's labs there. We know that there's nukes there. Is there something else in disputed land that they don't want to talk about, but that's there?
I don't know, Bill. I do think that there's over 40 biolabs that.
Yeah, well, we know those.
We have no idea.
Something in the biolabs.
But we talked about this 2 years ago. Russia, when they separated from the Soviet Union, they had, I think, was it 1,200 or 12,000? Some pretty large number of nuclear weapons. And they never gave them back. Even if they gave half of them back, hypothetically, they still got a chunk of nuclear weapons. Now, people may say, well, they're old. How operational can they be? They're probably 40 years old. Well,
weapons-grade plutonium in there.
Yeah, but not only that, but they haven't been fired. If somebody's been in there, greasing the gears, whatever you do to keep a rocket. And they could be well maintained, for all we know. But they're nuclear weapons. They probably have people who are charged with making sure that they're usable, wouldn't you think? I wouldn't think that you don't store them in a warehouse.
Okay, they didn't give them back. They didn't. So let's just say, for argument's sake,
right,
that there is a crew that nobody knows about, whether it's Russia or Ukraine, where they have people there that are loyalists, and they're down there keeping, the gears greased, the things polished up.
That's what I said. I said this.
Yeah.
There's probably somebody in the Ukraine whose job it is to maintain the weapons.
How many? And maybe that's the problem.
How many do you need? I mean, if you launch one on a major city in Russia, that's enough.
Look, there was a time, I don't have the numbers here in front of me right now, but it was staggering. I mean, we were talking the tens of thousands and the upper tens, like 17, 18, 20,000 nukes that Russia had. Now it's under, it's somewhere around 5,000 or 6,000. Just like we have somewhere around that number that's growing. But what nobody knows, and I only know this for a certain reason, is that even though we took the nukes, we dismantled the rockets, but we took the warheads, and they are stored under some major cities in bunkers underground. So we never got rid of them, and we had over 10,000. Like
well, when you
13,000.
think about, let's think about the Ukraine situation for a second. I've wondered, why is it that Russia, with all of its might, has never threatened to drop I've heard people say, well, Russia may use a limited yield nuke, but I haven't heard Putin say it. Now, maybe he has, and I just missed it, but it hasn't made the headlines. Putin threatens to use a nuke. So yes, why they have the nuclear weapons? Why wouldn't they say to Kyiv, stop this war now, or we're going to level Kyiv? Maybe it's because they know, like we're talking about here, that Kyiv has nuclear weapons, and they can counter what Russia does to them.
Yeah, we're not going to win, neither are you.
That's exactly right. So maybe that's why this is a land war, a terrible land war, a bloody land war, but it's not a nuclear war.
So the nuclear weapon was to be a deterrent.
Yeah.
And it's a scare tactic that forces you to get into really bloody battle to the death. And, I hate war. And I think everybody does. Well, not everybody does, because if you're isolated and sitting back, protected enough, it's not you. It's not your blood that's shed. Probably not your family's blood that's shed. So what do you care?
Speaking of war, Bill, from what I understand, Israel is right now on the verge of a major invasion into Gaza. They've already told Gaza, hey, either stop it or we're going to close this. We're going to shut this down right away, quickly.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it's going to happen, but I have a feeling that's something we should look for this weekend. It seems like they do that on the weekend. Also,
when the world is sleeping, that's when you attack. How did we attack when we got into the Gulf War? We had the stealth bombers. Yeah, you couldn't see them coming. But to add insult to injury there, we did it in the wee hours of the morning when everybody slept like a thief in the night. We came in. And that was a long time ago that we did that. And I remember being at an air show in Florida on the beach, and they had on the PA the pilot, going, now we're out on the runway now taxiing, and the plane took off and he's talking. And while we're sitting there in the crowd being, into the spectacle of things and watching the people skiing out on the water, this conversation only lasted a couple of minutes. I mean, not even, it wasn't like 20, 30 minutes, an hour. It was a few minutes. And all of a sudden, they said, if we can have your attention to look straight up. And you look up, there's nothing there. And then the B-1 bomber or whatever that thing is, that winged big bomber.
Yeah.
It just dropped out of nowhere, and everyone is going, and so it's pretty. Imagine what they have now.
Well, it's got to be mind-boggling. I look at what's happening, though. The untrustworthy news media is trying to make it appear that there's a rift between
Trump,
Bibi Netanyahu, and Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And supposedly they're saying that Netanyahu is trying to drag us into a shooting war with Iran, and Trump is trying to negotiate the situation, and that's where the rift is. I don't believe that's the case. I do believe that it's that element in our media that tries to adjust narratives and actually create scenarios, phony ones.
Well, and actually, the left wants to go to war. They want to fire up that war machine. We know that. So if the left is an agent of, or of that deep state, if the news is an agent of the left movement that wants to go to war, sure, there's a rift between Netanyahu and Trump, according to them. And if they can sell the story enough, maybe the war happens.
But you know what? There's no rift, Bill. There's no rift in people who have tried right side coffee, Jim and Bill's right side coffee.
Exactly.
If you have it, if I have it, we both agree this is the greatest cup of coffee. My God, this is so
Life
good.
is good.
It is.
Yeah.
And what you should do, if you don't take our word for it, really, we're just two guys who work, I was going to say on the radio, we're working, I got to get my head straight. We're doing a podcast, but it kind of feels like the radio, you know what I'm saying? That's what we did for years. But we both love right side coffee, and I think you will too. You're saying, well, I'd like to try it, but I don't know where the heck to get it. I never see it in stores. I see other brands of coffee. I don't see yours. It's very simple. All you do is go to rightsideshop.com. rightsideshop.com, or you can go to our website, which is it'sanotherday.com. There's a button at the very top. You just click on that button. It'll take you right to our store. You'll see some of our other swag, as my cohort likes to say, other little goodies, trinkets,
swag,
and things.
baby swag.
Yep, other trinkets and stuff that we sell in the gift shop, but you'll also find our coffee there, too. Jim and Bill's Right Side Coffee. It's a delicious cup of coffee. It's the perfect way to start your day. You should really try it. It's what gives our singers, Juan Jose and the Border Crossers, a little zip every time they sing the song. Listen.
Wake up on the right side with Right Side Coffee.
See? You should hear them without the coffee. Without the coffee, it sounds like a waltz. So anyway, that's Juan Jose and the Border Crossers. Try it. Jim and Bill's Right Side Coffee. This week, it's going to be an interesting week. The president's traveling in the Middle East. Pray for him. Pray for our president. Even if, by the way, you didn't vote for the guy, he's still your president. You still should pray for him. That's the problem, Bill. The left can't do that. I think it's because a lot of people on the left don't seem to have God. Have you noticed that? A lot of people on the left, it seems like the people on the right are more, I shouldn't say, but it seems to me like the right is more God-fearing than the left.
Well, they would tell us that we are on the lunatic fringe and that we're radicals and what do they want to, what do they call it? I forget now all the names that they call, but evangelical. They're really attacking the evangelical. And even the Pope did that. And you know what? Your faith is your faith, and nobody should challenge it. Nobody.
Yeah.
They don't have the right.
Well, again, when you listen to the Pope, give him some time. He may come around. He may be a really good Pope. Then again, he may be somebody who is the worst. Who knows?
Well, the thing that I just said is what the media said he said.
Yeah, and I was going to point out, we have to remember, though, Bill, he's still just a guy from Chicago. Seriously.
Yeah.
Remember this. Maybe that's kind of good that if we get anything out of this new Pope is that when you're wondering what he's all about, think for a second, he's just a guy from Chicago who's been put into this position. So he's human.
Right.
So Anyway, my friend, I think we can put a fork in this program because we're just about done.
Oh, I don't know about you, but I would say I am done. I'm ready to, shut the door on this.
Well, I think now would be a good time then.
I'll take the controls right now and just say this. Hasta la vista, baby. We're out of here.
This is CRN America.